Hey, Robert, how's it going today?
I'm doing wonderful. How you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for taking time to talk with me.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about your new documentary, Making the Five Heartbeats. What are the listeners in for with the new film?
They're going to see a journey of a filmmaker like none other. I think it's a very inspiring story. Uh, the Five Heartbeats was my second movie after Hollywood Shuffle. And I went from a budget of, a credit card and no money to $8.7 million. And I decided to write, direct, produce, and dance and star in a film, and it was the hardest journey of my life.
Well, it's coming to theaters on August 27th, and there are a few theaters here in Minnesota screening it. Tickets are at fathomevents.com. Robert, what made you want to go back and revisit this film? It's been almost 30 years since its release.
It was really the fans, because everywhere I go, people really love this movie, and they're like, I love the Five Heartbeats. How did you make it? Why did you make it? Who is it about? What's your casting like? How do you think as a director? And because I was getting all these questions, I said, why don't I do a documentary? Because there are some really fascinating stories about how I made the film behind the scenes that only I know, and that sent me on a journey to make this documentary that I think, fans and people that have never seen the film will really enjoy the journey of a filmmaker.
And when you originally did the Five Heartbeats, back in even as early as the 90s there, the way African Americans were portrayed in films and just kind of how things, as you mentioned, went on behind the scenes, definitely a lot different than they are now.
Well, yeah, a lot of the images, the reason I became a filmmaker was because I was auditioning for slaves and pimps and drug dealers and gangbangers, and when I created the Five Heartbeats, I wanted to create a new image of men of color, and I wanted to show another side so that, people wouldn't look and say, oh, that's all they can do and that's who they are. And I used the backdrop of the 60s and R&B music, but I really had a hidden agenda to share with the world a new image of, black men.
The subject, of course, goes hand in hand. Back then when the vocal groups were performing, people loved them on stage, but they still had to deal with, which doors they could go in and, which kitchen they could eat in and all that kind of stuff. So, obviously, things definitely the same for both realms.
Well, my technical advisors on the film were the Dales, the singing group, the Dales, Oh, What a Night, Stay in My Corner. And they told me this story about their first album, and they're not even on their album cover. It's a couple in love, white couple in love on Michigan, by the water. And I said, why weren't you on the album cover? And they said, well, because the record company told us that our faces would offend, the audiences, and they didn't want to see black faces. So we're in a little square in the back of our, album. And we wrote all the songs and did the music, but we couldn't show ourselves. And I was like, wow. So I put that in the movie. So as they started to share this stuff with me, I was like, oh, my God, really? And they said, yeah, And even though they were in their late 70s, the memory still stung them like it had just happened yesterday.
Yeah, it's incredible. Again, the new documentary, Making the Five Heartbeats, will be in theaters August 27th, and you can go to fathomevents.com. And Robert, I know it's also the 25th anniversary of the Meteor Man, and that broke a lot of ground as being the first ever a black superhero movie. With success, like with Black Panther and those sorts of things, it must feel good knowing you helped pave the way for that.
I really do feel good. It's been 25 years. It was August 6th, 25 years when we were in the theaters. And, the movie didn't do well, but I know that I planted a seed that when I saw Black Panther cross the $1 billion mark, I was like, I know in another universe I am connected to that film because people said, oh, it's possible, and there is a market, there is an audience that will have an appetite for superheroes of color. And now, it was born. So I feel really honored that, 25 years ago, I was really thinking about a new future.
Well, and Robert, I know you more for the comedy side of things when you first started out, working with Eddie Murphy and, Rodney Dangerfield. What was it that made you want to branch out and get involved, basically every other aspect of entertainment, behind and in front of the camera?
Well, I really think it was the fact that the roles that I was auditioning for, I thought were poorly written, and then I thought they were stereotypical. And rather than complain about it, my best friend Keenan Ivory Wayans, I said, why don't we make our own movies? And that's really what started me as a writer, director, producer, everything. But I love doing stand up, but the side of me that wanted more, and I have a skill set that I think is kind of rare. I was able to pull it off.
So do you feel like things have come a long way since then? I know we probably still have some more work to do in the industry, but are you pleased with how things have shaped out so far?
I think it's a totally different time in Hollywood because you have more people of color in lead roles, and you have more writer, director, producers of color, so that the voices that are coming across television, the movie screens, are more authentic. And I think that's the key word. It's like the more you have creators that, are listening and studio executives that are listening, things are going to change for the better.
Awesome. And I know, Robert, you are always busy and making the 5 Heartbeats coming out. I know we've seen you in Black Lightning recently. Do you have anything else maybe in the works or something else we should look out for?
Well, right now I'm going to be doing a new television series for BET. I just sold a pilot for it's. I always think of new and fresh, different things, and so I'm doing a gospel Twilight Zone. It's going to have gospel music, and the themes are going to be, faith-based, but it's going to be really different. I did an episode of Love Is for Oprah's network, and it just got picked up for a second season, so I'm excited about doing some more shows with them. And Keenan and I are working on a Broadway show for the 5 Heartbeats as well.
Awesome. Again, I'm a huge fan, and it's great, all the accolades. I'm sure your trophy room is probably spilling out as we speak, but looking forward to making the 5 Heartbeats. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me, man. Only the best.
And again, that was the one and only Robert Townsend, and his new documentary, Making the 5 Heartbeats, is in theaters August 27th, and there are a few theaters in Minnesota screening it, so get your tickets at fathomevents.com.